Many of the world's most successful businesses started out in a garage. Whether you're starting a YouTube channel or something bigger, you're gonna need a place for your content to be seen. The problem is, all the websites like Squarespace, Blogger, Tumblr, WordPress, Weebly, and other preset website designers is that they're confining to just generic purposes. Your idea is more than just a generic purpose. That's why it's important to have the knowledge on how to create your own website from scratch. Not only do you have creative control over everything that gets shown on your website, but you'll also be able to take charge of your content and organize it the way that you want it to be organized, not some way that you're forced to by a certain website designer. So ladies and gentlemen, let's go ahead and figure out how to create your own custom website using nothing other than your just generic free text pad. So a common misconception with coding a website is that you either have to be super knowledgeable or super rich to be able to code a custom website. Not only is that wrong, but now the web development market is way more open than it has ever been in the past. You can literally code on any device you have on you at any moment. If you have an iPhone, you can code on it. If you have an Android phone, you can code on it. If you have a laptop, a Chromebook, a computer, you can code on it. It is absolutely amazing. And the reason for this is, it doesn't require much resources to code a website. Pretty much any modern device is capable of viewing a website, so that means any capable device at this moment is capable of making a website. Keep in mind, I said make a website, not host a website. That is a completely different thing. Today, I'm going to show you how to make the website, and in a later part of this installment of videos, I will show you how to publish it to people on the internet. But before we start publishing anything, we need to first make the dang thing. So here we are at www.htmlinstant.com, where we can actually code and watch the updates happen in real time. This thing is amazing. Now, right off the bat, I'm going to mention that I'm going to be referencing the know-all, be-all guide for HTML and CSS, which, by the way, are the two most common web development coding languages of pretty much all time. So I'm going to be referencing the documentation for these two coding languages from the organization that conceived them in the first place, and this website is www.w3schools.com. Now, pretty much you just go there. They have resources and details and properties on everything I'm going to be talking about in this tutorial. So if you want to just start binging on this stuff and learn on your own time, that is over there. It is an amazing source for pretty much anything HTML, CSS, whatever, JavaScript related. It is a godsend. Oh man, I'm getting passionate about this. I'm doing hand gestures and you guys can't even see me. It's great. So anyways, let's get back on topic. Here we are at htmlinstant.com, and now we're going to start coding our first HTML and watch it happen in real time. Are you guys excited? I'm excited. This is exciting stuff right here. So right off the bat, web browsers aren't magical fairies. They can't tell what language we're coding in, so we have to tell it what language what we're about to type is. So I'm going to type in !doctype HTML end caret. What we're telling a web browser is that anything between these two lines of code right here is HTML, and it should treat it appropriately. I can't understate how important this is. So what you've just seen me do is set up an actual pair of elements. I start it with HTML and I end it with HTML. Every single element you put in must have a start and end tag. Now, what defines a tag? Well, anything between something, between carets, must end with a / something in carets. You can't just have hanging participles where you just start with something and you never end it. So as you can see here, I've started my HTML and I've ended my HTML tag. Now we've declared what our document is, we can actually start adding stuff to it. Now, everything you add is going to be within tags. I like to think of tags as little objects around my household. Probably one of the most important ones is the div tag, which you can do by between carets div, and then you end it, of course. Divs are pretty much containers. I imagine this as just a little box on your desk that you put papers into and it organizes them. You'll see what I mean later. They're super useful. Now, on the other end of the spectrum, we can have an image. Images are a little bit more visual. I kind of imagine those as the posters on your wall or the pictures that are framed on your wall. Pretty much, you can insert images into your HTML using these. So as you can see, these tags are kind of the building blocks of coding in HTML. So let's go ahead and start doing some stuff. First off, I'm going to stay organized and click my space button 4 times. That'll indent me a little bit, so when I create my next tag, it'll be separated from the doctype HTML tag. So I'm going to type in H1. That stands for our first heading type. Of course, I'm going to hit enter, space 4 more times, and create my end tag. And there we go, we have ended our H1. Now between here, we can start putting the magic. As you can see, nothing showed up on the right hand side of our screen. It's because we haven't put any content in yet. I'm gonna space in 8 times this time because we have gone one layer deeper into the tag hierarchy. So I'm gonna type in my first website. As you can see, we finally get something showing up on the right side of the screen. That's because we've added our first bit of content. H1s mean nothing unless you put anything inside of them. Same with HTML. You can put tags of HTML all over the place, but they won't do anything until you give them some beef, give them some content to work with. So there we go. You just created your first heading title in HTML. Go ahead and give yourself a clap. But we're not stopping there. We're doing more, of course. Let's find a way to separate this heading from what we're gonna put underneath. So I'm gonna hit enter after our H1. I'm gonna space out 4 times because we're not inside the H1, we're right underneath it. So we don't go deeper into the H1, we just go right below it. Now I'm gonna create a vertical bar that's gonna separate what we're about to type in from the heading. To do that, I'm just gonna do HR, and of course, on the same line, do HR end tag. Always complete your tags. The reason why I did this one on the same line as where I started the HR tag is that we're not putting anything into it, so just spacing it out and putting it on different lines would just be unnecessary. Therefore, I'm going to leave the start and end tag for the HR on the same row. So now we got a nice little divider underneath our heading of my first website. Let's go ahead and give this some content. So I'm going to space in, give myself the correct amount of alignment, and I'm going to create a divider or a div. And I'm just going to go ahead and do an end tag for that. Now, like I said earlier, divs are just containers for stuff you put inside of them, so we don't see anything updating quite yet because, of course, we haven't given it any beef. So between these two divs, I'm going to create a paragraph. To do that, I'm going to do the P tag for paragraph, and I'm going to end it with a subsequent /P as usual. Now, between these, I'm going to put some text. So I don't want to sit here typing out paragraphs, so I've just grabbed some lorem ipsum generic text off the internet, and I'm gonna go ahead and paste it in here. Okay, as you can see, that took up a lot of space, but now we have some beef going on here. And my gosh, that beef is glorious. So now I'm gonna show you guys why divs are important. Let's say I want to create 2 columns of this text. Well, to do that, obviously we'd have to split up our content, so I'm going to cut half of my text out and keep it in my clipboard, and I'm going to bury this paragraph 1 layer deeper in another div. So I'm going to push that in there, and I'm going to indent accordingly so I do not get confused, and I'm going to end the div that I just inserted. So I'm going to do a /div tag. So now you see we've ended this div right here with this one, which is inside the bigger one right here. So pretty much what we're going to do is make this first div our first column, and I'm going to make a second column right here with our second div, and of course, like always, I'm going to end it. Between these ones, I'm going to create my second P for paragraph. End it, of course, and between these 2 P's, I'm going to paste in the content of my second column. As you can see, we've separated them into their own respective divs here, but they're not in their own columns. Well, we need to tell it to do so and put them side by side. So right here in this div that only contains this one paragraph element right here, I'm going to type in style equals and then 2 quotes like that, and I'm going to insert what style I want to apply to it in between the quotes. Now in short, what we're adding right now is a little bit of CSS, but it's sprinkled in with the HTML. So I'm going to type in width colon 50%, and then I'm going to end it with a semicolon. As you can see, that's kind of squished all of our text for the first paragraph off to the left side of our screen. Well, we can see that the second paragraph hasn't really gotten that, and that's because it's in a different div. This div right here, which we applied the width 50% to, well, it ends right here. Well, we gotta apply it to the second div, which encapsulates the second paragraph. Now you can see what I mean by making sure that you keep your content organized. It would be really hard to see that if our divs were just over here by themselves and you'd have to count to see where it ended. So let's go ahead and copy our style of width 50 over to the second div. Now I've added the style of 50%. We can see that everything's kind of squished over to the left here, but it's not really next to this column, which was what we intended for. To do that, we need to make sure that these divs are seen as the right object. We want them to be seen as blocks that can be assembled next to each other. So to do that, I'm going to type in display inline block and semicolon. That's going to make sure that this div right here is seen as a block that can be put in line with other blocks. We haven't allowed this one to be an inline block, so let's go ahead and make it one. Display inline dash block and semicolon. So as you can see, we've made both these paragraphs width of 50, but nothing really changes. And well, that's because that we've both set the width down to 50, but that doesn't mean that they can scooch up next to each other. HTML just sees that as, you know, we're just shrinking both of them. They'll still be in the same order. They'll still be underneath one of each other. How do we change that? Well, this is where it comes in to be important, that we actually encapsulated both of these little subdivs right here and this subdiv right here. We encapsulated them in a giant parent div, div that encompasses both of them, which is what we call a parent div, and these would be child divs because they're inside of the parent div. Well, on that parent div, we actually need to specify that all the elements in them should assemble according to their width and flow and flex with each other and arrange in blocks of elements that can be put side by side. To do that, we're going to be using the display style yet again. So I'm going to do style equals 2 quotes, and I'm going to put in my styling in between here. So we're going to use our display style, and I'm going to define this style as not an inline block because we don't want this to be assembled with anything else. We want this block to be an object that, you know, flexes the object inside of it so that they can be arranged right next to each other. So as such, I'm going to give it the display style of flex and end it with my semicolon, and boom, there we go. We have the two paragraphs side by side in columns. Now, as we can see, they're, you know, kind of rather close together. It would be nice if we could fix that to be that they weren't so close together. That's pretty easy to do. Let's go ahead and give them some padding. Normally I'd give them a margin, but seeing as the fact that we put them up to 50% on both sides, and well, that adds up to 100, we've already maximized the width of this. I'd like to put in some padding because margin extrudes space outside of the element, while padding digs on the inside of the element. Seeing as we can't really extrude outside these two paragraphs because we're right up against the edge, because 50% plus 50% equals 100, we don't really have any more distance to go outside of this thing. Let's go ahead and add some padding, which actually gives it some separation on the inside of the element. So instead of this paragraph right here, you know, adding a little bit of space outside of it to this side, we'd actually be adding some, you know, padding on the inside. So let's go ahead and go to our div encapsulating our first paragraph right here and add another style. This style will be a padding, and I'm going to add the padding of about 5 px, which is 5 pixels. As you can see, that's given it a little bit more room, but wait, we haven't finished. Let's do it to the other paragraph. So yet again, I'm going to do style, padding, 5 px, end. And as you can see, we've got a nice little padding of 5 pixels on each one of these, and they're separated. It looks nice. We're into columns. So now that we've created this little div of columnized content, let's go ahead and add another divider at the end of this thing by doing some HR, and then I'll end my HR right there. And that will kind of end off this little paragraph segment. So real quick, let's give this little paragraph segment right here a title. You know, we want to describe what this content's all about. So we could just add an H1, we put an H1 right there, right? And since we haven't ended it, it thinks that everything after this H1 tag is a heading. So you can see it transformed our entire paragraph into H1. Let's go ahead and fix that by ending off our H1 right there. And we gotta, that's another H1 tag, we gotta end it. So now anything between these two lines is considered heading 1, instead of where if we remove this, it would just assume everything after this, which is the whole entire document after that, is considered a heading. So let's go ahead and end it off there, and let's put some title in between here. This is my first paragraph in HTML. As you can see there, it kind of inserted it above that parent div and bumped everything else down. Well, maybe that's not what we want. Maybe we want it to be appended to the beginning of this first one and have everything else kind of dynamically move around it. Well, we gotta put it inside of one of the child divs if we wanted to do that. So I'm gonna go ahead here and select my heading, and I'm going to cut it, and I'm gonna move it inside of one of our little child divs right here. So I'm gonna insert it right here. And there we go. I've kind of pasted it in. Let me redo my formatting here and make sure that everything is aligned correctly. And as you can see, it added it right here because we put it inside of the div that is this content, not the entire div, which is all this content. Now, it would probably help if I actually did proper capitalization, and there we go. So let's say we wanted to add a picture after this second paragraph right here, and we want it to be stuck in this little area right here, not just fitting the bottom of this entire section. Well, if we want to just put it right after the second paragraph and just put it right in this area right here, we would actually add it in the child div beneath our second paragraph. So I'm going to go right underneath our second paragraph right here inside of the child div still, and I'm going to add an image tag, or img, and then I'm going to end it off with a /img. That's going to create us an image tag, but as you can see, it doesn't know what image to use, so let's go ahead and tell it real quick. To tell it, I'm going to type in src equals and then 2 quotation marks. In between those 2 quotation marks, we can actually put in a link to the image. Now keep in mind that we can't just upload a document from our own computer because, you know, the website can't access your computer as a host. I mean, it could, but your computer is not an image hosting service and it wouldn't be on all the time for people to view and pull that data from. So you need to have this image hosted somewhere on the internet. Luckily for us, there's a free website that actually offers HTTPS or SSL supported image hosting. So pretty much all you do is choose a file from your computer, upload it here, and it'll give you a link to where they're hosting on their website, and you can basically plug it in right here and it'll be a URL, so you don't have to worry about, you know, uploading it anywhere else. That way you can link your image with your document and have it show up on your website. Now normally if you were going with a hosting solution, you just upload it to your own private server, but since we're just doing this on our own computer and we're not worrying about publishing this thing quite yet, we can use httpsimage.com to kind of help us out. So I've gone ahead and selected my image from my computer, and I'm gonna go ahead and click upload right here, and that's going to give us a link to our image, which you can just go ahead and copy. If I can get just the image right there, and then we can place it inside of the src, and that's going to give us you know, a reference to our image. As we can scroll down, there it is, encapsulated within the second child div. As you can see, it's a little bit intrusive, it's a little bit big, and it takes up too much room. So let's go ahead and fix that, shall we? Let's go ahead and do a nice little width tag right here, and I'm going to go ahead and put that right there. And between the 2 quotes, I'm going to give it a width of, let's say, 10% of the div that it's inside. Keep in mind that any percent you put in here is relative to the immediate div that it is within. So this is 10% of the child div, which is then 50% of the parent div. So I'm going to go ahead and make it a little bit larger here. I'm going to say 50% of the child div. And that looks about the right size to me. So to go ahead and center this image, I'm going to add some styling. So I'm going to type in my style equals and our 2 quotation marks there. And inside of these 2 quotations, I'm going to put my CSS styling. So I'm going to type in display block, and I'm going to end that attribute there. That's going to make sure that HTML knows that this is a block that can be moved around or centered or aligned to the left or aligned to the right. Then I'm going to add in margin -right :auto and end. I'm going to type in margin -left :auto and end : and that's going to center our image nice and cleanly within this child div. To kind of break down what we did, we just made sure that it was a block that could be moved around like a Lego could, you know, just move it, pick it up, put it in the middle, align it with the left, align it with the right. It is a block, it can be moved around. And we just basically specified that the right and left margins are automated, and that will kind of center it within the div, make sure that the 2 right and left margins on this thing are equal to the most part, and it'll leave it in the middle. So there we go. We've created our first kind of website where we put in kind of our text, and we have an image right here, and we have our paragraphs, our paragraph heading. It looks really nice. But to be honest, not quite as nice as we would probably want it to be. Frankly, this website kind of looks like it should be back in like 2006 when people were still figuring out how to use the internet. And to a certain extent, that's fine. For all intents and purposes, this is HTML at its most raw. From what you can see right here, if we took out all of the CSS inline styling, like, you know, the style padding and whatnot, this would basically just be one block of text that had no look attributes added to it at all. It would just be content, and there would be no design or style to it at all. And this basically attests to the true definition of the difference between HTML and CSS. HTML is the markup or content of a website. For all intents and purposes, it is just the beef of your website. It is the text, it is the content, it is cut and dry, done, you have your content there, end. CSS supplements HTML in the fact that it adds color, depth, style, and formatting to the content that HTML adds. Without CSS, every website you went to would look like a jumble of text with no design to it. And that's why these two are so important to learn together. They build off one another and they work together perfectly. To build a true website, you can't have HTML without CSS, and you definitely can't have CSS without HTML. So now I've kind of gone over the basics of HTML and a little bit of CS sprinkled in there. We haven't done much CSS at all, and actually by the end of this, and once you're creating your own full-fledged websites, you're going to want to take out these little style references and put them in their own document and just reference them here instead of putting too much styling and obviously getting like your own block of text right here, because this style right here that we're adding to this div with the padding of columns and stuff, well, this can get so complicated sometimes that this spans full pages. The CSS for some styles span multiple pages, and you don't want to be putting that inside of your element or your tag. You want that to be in its own document. So later we'll kind of learn how to separate that off into its own document and only reference it here to kind of make things look even smoother. But this is just the bare bones of HTML. I feel really bad that I'm holding back on you guys, but there's just so much more to dive into. It's so exciting. There's lots more that you can do with HTML, CSS. Even stuff like where if you don't want people dragging your images, you can define an attribute that makes it so it's not draggable and not savable and stuff like that. There's just so much nitty gritty, and it's awesome. I love coding for the internet. It is the most liberating and free flow stream of ideas and just making them happen. It is amazing. Alright guys, so that is the first part of this installment of tutorials showing you guys how to make your own website using nothing other than just HTML, CSS, and WordPad. If you guys enjoyed this episode, or if you learned anything at all from it, it would be really helpful if you guys liked the video. It really helps get my content out there to other people that could benefit from it. Also, subscribe if you're new to be notified when we put up new tutorials. If you want access to these tutorials a day earlier than the normal people who subscribe here on YouTube, you can actually subscribe to get text message notifications a day earlier before all the people here, so that you can view these tutorials before anyone else. Real quick before you guys leave, it would help out if you guys followed me on Google+. I know it's kind of a weird plug for me, but one of the reasons why I was so inspired to make my own website is that if you link your YouTube channel with your website, you verify that you own that channel in the eyes of Google, which is one of the requirements for getting the verified checkmark on your channel. Now there's a whole bunch of other requirements, but one of them is having 2,000 followers on Google+. So basically what I'm asking you guys to do is go to my channel, click on the About section, head over to my Google+, and follow it there. It would help out a ton if every one of you guys did it. We'd be done with this video. It would be super awesome. And you guys are just generally the best. So thank you guys for that. So with that all out of the way, hopefully you guys learned something from this tutorial. Share the love, share it with your friends, all the good stuff. I'm done plugging. Thank you all for tuning in. I will see you next Tuesday for another tutorial. As always, stay awesome, guys. Take it easy, and I will see you in the next one. Peace out.